do I wear this one to go out, or shall I go with this one? I don't know. What do you think? Is this a question you often ask yourself, whether it's opening up a cupboard, a wardrobe, and you've got a cupboard full of clothes and you just don't know what to wear in order to go out that evening, or you open your fridge is full of food, but you just don't know what to make. Just so many different decisions in life, right, that we have to make all the time. But the thing is, sometimes some decisions are more difficult than others, and sometimes you just don't really know which way to go. This way, that way. You really don't know. Hi, if this is you,
yes,
I, Dolly Malik, would love to share with you in this short video 2 quick and easy tips on how to better improve your decision making, how to make it much faster. And do stay tuned until the end, because I'm going to share with you a 3rd bonus tip, and it really will help to explain how that tip, coupled with the first 2, has really transformed my life in a much bigger way. So as we start off this video, the first couple of tips I do want to share with you are all around the concept of options when it comes to decision making. So firstly, around the importance of limiting your options, and secondly, the importance of actually drawing a line between what's deemed as good and bad options. So like I mentioned, both are around options, and but the first one relates more towards the quantitative side, hence the word limiting, and the second one around the qualitative side, around what is deemed as a good or bad option. So moving on quickly to tip number 1, which is around limiting the options. I remember when going out with friends, the power these days is that limiting options is so important. Giving people options is great, because what it does do is it helps to speed up people's decision making. So for those who are indecisive, presenting them with options is so important. For me, I find that things like polls, whether it's polls that we now get on social media platforms, which are all here and there all the time, they're literally at our fingertips through the likes of our devices, right? They're absolutely great when they're used in the right way, and when they're not quite used in the right way, they can actually have more of a detrimental effect, and that all relates to the importance of limiting options. I remember a friend of mine who'd volunteered to plan an evening out for us, a group of us, and there was basically 5 friends that she had intended for 5 of us, including herself, to go out. And bless her, she thought she was doing the right thing, wanting to try and accommodate everyone, but equally giving us a good number of options to help with that decision-making process. But what then happened is, with 5 people and 5 options, right, she didn't quite bank on the fact that she would end up getting each individual replying to a separate date for each of those 5 options. So ultimately her end result was that she was no further ahead in trying to determine and finalise a date and time for us all to go out on this evening out. So that's where the importance of limiting options comes into play. Making sure that whatever options you do present to people, whether it's in a verbal situation, whether it's online, or whether it's through the likes of devices and actual polls, it's just very important to remember what your end goal is that you're hoping to achieve, and then to set the options and the intentions accordingly. That way, what you do find, like in terms of with my friend, she ended up with creating more kind of chaos in trying to finalise a date and time for the evening out, rather than actually for the poll to be focusing on an end result of one date and time as being the firm favourite. And that was and that's the thing when it comes to the importance of just choosing a select number of options, so that you can ultimately determine whether your results are to be 2 or 3 choices that you want to gauge from that poll, or whether it's even just one finite decision, as in this simple example of an evening out. So that hopefully will assist you going forwards in using such tools and techniques for decision making and making those decisions faster, or even if you're someone who's being asked to contribute towards a decision in how you then engage in those choices. Moving on then swiftly to decision making faster decision making tip number 2 is around the qualitative side, and that is all to do with the importance of drawing a line between what you determine as being a good or bad decision. And just to give you an example of this from my own personal experience, in the workplace, where I was in the company at the time, I was really not happy during a certain part of my career. I wasn't happy with the role I was in. I'd kind of felt I'd learned everything I needed to know as far as that, and it wasn't really pushing me towards the further development and progress that I was hoping for. What I basically had to decide within myself was to give myself certain good or bad options. So the good option would be that I'm happy with the company as a whole, but let me look at possibly looking for other roles within the company because I'm happy there. The bad option would have been to stay put where I am and just kind of wish that things would improve, or just kind of go with the flow of what my management were trying to say to me in terms of opportunities coming up further down the line, etc. So I think again, if that's yourself in a position, whether it's in relation to a working environment or whether it's in relation to a personal partnership environment, home dynamics, whatever, it's the importance of weighing up the qualitative side of the options that you're presenting to yourself to make that decision faster. So it could well be, I mean, I was happy myself in terms of the company and the culture I was working for within that company. I just was no longer happy with being in that particular role and wanting to progress in certain ways. So for me, the decision making was in terms of drawing a line of a bad decision was to stay within that role. Whereas for yourselves watching, it could be that you're just equally not happy with A, the role that you're in a company, and B, also the company itself. Maybe it's no longer sitting with your core values. And to be honest, that's where I did end up ultimately at the stage when I decided to retire from the corporate career. When I'd reached that stage where the role was no longer comfortable for me, and neither was the core values. They were no longer sitting with me and my personal values versus the company. I then took that decision of deciding to resign. And I have to say, using this tool of limiting the drawing that line between good and bad options really helped me to make that decision much faster. And that leads me on to the bonus tip. And the bonus tip ultimately definitely links to the first two, and it's something that resides in all of us, but I think we don't always all home in on it enough in reality in decision making, and that is the power of intuition. I mean, how many times have you needed to go with the value of something like this, right? This is a receipt, and I'm just saying that as an example because I've done it so many times when I've gone to stores and I've bought something which at that precise moment I've either thought, why do I really need this? It's in the sales, it's a great bargain, but is it something that's ultimately going to suit me? Do I actually really need it? Could I use the money on something else? Still, the other side of me thinks, no, go for it, it's a bargain. And then I bring it home, I try it on, I'm like, no, this definitely isn't for me. Or I try it on and I think, yeah, I really like it, but do I need a 12th pair of black boots? Ladies, you probably know what I'm talking about here, but I do kind of think in that sense. I'm sure men have similar stereotypes in other ways. I'm just giving an example of being a woman myself, but I've done it so many times when it comes to clothing, when it's come to handbags, when it's come to shoes, and then the number of times I then end up going back to undertake returns for whatever reason. So I think the importance there, although it's a small thing, is about following your intuition. And to me, although I've given you some very small tips and examples of how I've used them, if you do stay tuned for part 2 in this series, I will show you how these different parts of the decision-making steps do actually help on a much wider transformational stage. Thank you so much for watching, and do please like, share and comment down below if you've been in this kind of situation yourself, and also do please subscribe if you haven't already done so. I'd greatly appreciate for you to come on this empowering and transformational journey with me.